And the anxious becomes an avoidant. Seems like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it? But it's actually not. Stick around, I'll explain why. Now, it's not actually the anxious preoccupied becomes an avoidant, it's actually that they revert to being a dismissive avoidant, because in their younger years, they were actually a pure DA. And as what commonly happens with a DA is they've attracted a fearful avoidant partner with unrealistic standards, double standards in many cases. So within that relationship, the ethical, dismissive avoidant wants to remain. They want to press in, align themselves with what society says is a successful relationship by staying in that relationship, even though they may not love their partner. And in doing so, they've adapted to understand the only way to survive is by predicting, anticipating, redirecting, understanding unmet needs, unexpressed emotions, held tensions in their partner, something they never did as a child, as a DA, but they acquire that anxious preoccupied wound later, and they become the anxious leaning fearful avoidant. Now you'd think because they have a dismissive primary wound, wouldn't they be a dismissive leaning fearful? Well, no, because they're operating for such a long time in that anxious side. That's the predominant wound, but they still have that theta consciousness, that disassociation, that shutdown, the lack of attentiveness. They wouldn't remember their partner's colour of their eyes, what kind of flowers they like, or where they like to go away on holidays. It's just not a reference for them at all. They do apply enough to survive in the relationship, but it's never satisfying for the fearful avoidant who just wants more and more. Now, at the end of the relationship, as it starts to fall apart and they separate out, that anxious wound is no longer necessary. And guess what happens? You may recognize this pattern in yourself where you start to leave the tap running, leave the stove on, forget to pay the rent. All the things that you never got wrong in that relationship, you started to revert back to the mind of the child that never had to pay attention to anything else other than their immediate needs. If you're discovering these things happening for you, you are the anxious becoming the avoidant, or reverting back to that attachment style now that you're single. Now, there are solutions to this, and it can be very affronting. It's a whole alignment of identity starting to be like in a state of crisis. Relax, it's okay. We can find our way through this. Reach out, and I'll have a conversation with you about what it means to re-engage with that inner child's wounds and heal not only your anxious wounds, but your dismissive ones too.